All right, guys, what did I just do? What did I just do? Well, today I'm going to teach you two words that mean the same thing. Well, one is a phrase, the other is just a word. Okay, do you know what the word pivot means? Pivot. If you pivot, you change direction. Okay? And the phrase is to do an about face. It's kind of a weird phrase. Face. To do an about face. Remember, I was walking and then I stopped and I changed direction 180 degrees. Okay? So to pivot or to do an about face means to change direction 180 degrees. It's windy out here, guys. Let's go this way. Let's go the opposite way of the wind. Okay, so this could be physical, like if you're walking somewhere, or if you're, let's say you're standing, let's say I'm talking to you, right? And suddenly I do an about face and I walk the other, I just leave you. I turn around and I go that way. It means I'm doing an about face. Maybe you made me mad. I'm done with you. Right? That's doing an about face. Now, it could be for different reasons. Okay? So, kids playing in the backyard here. So to do an about face means to turn 180 degrees. Okay, it could be physical, it could be mental, it could be something like your attitude, right? If you do an about face, means you change your mind about something completely, or you change your behavior, or you change your anything, right? Actually, I listen to some financial podcasts and because I like to kind of see what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the world these days. And this one financial podcaster that I listen to, he says that the central banks are going to do an about face. They're going to pivot. Okay, so what does he mean by that? Well, the central banks in the Western world, I don't know about the Eastern world, I don't follow that stuff, but the Western world, right? Countries like Canada, the US, Europe, they've been raising interest rates, right? So what would they do if suddenly people can't make their payments on, you know, their payments on their house, let's say? So let's say, for example, these houses here, right? Let's say you buy a house here for $1 million. Hey, there's a sold sign right there. So these houses right here where I'm at, they're probably $500,000 to probably $500,000 to $700,000. So these houses probably are not $1 million. But I think the houses just over there by the canal, maybe we should go over by the canal, guys. But so there are houses here in Alberta for that sell for $1 million easy, or if not 2 million or 3 million. You know, if it's a big house, like that's a pretty big house over there. I don't know, you know, it all depends on the area, it depends on the size of the house or whatever. So let's say you buy $1 million house here in Canada. How much are you going to pay for interest? What is your interest payment going to be? Well, it depends on what the central bank decides for what their interest rate is, right? So right now in Canada, the central bank raised its rates just a week or two ago to 5%. Okay, now the central bank lends money to real banks that you use. If you come here to Canada, there's some big major banks, right? Royal Bank, Scotia Bank, CIBC, TD. There's a bunch of banks here, but they borrow money from the central bank. Okay, and in Canada, the central bank is called the Bank of Canada. No poop and pee. Ah, shucks, that ruined my plans, guys. I was just gonna go pee under that tree. I'll have to find another place to go pee. Right, so here in Canada, the central banks, or no, not banks, Bank One, the central bank is called the Bank of Canada. In the US, oh guys, look at that nice house. Wow, it's a beautiful house. Let's see if we can find our way down to the canal. The canal is right over here. In the US, the central bank is called the Federal Reserve, or the Fed for short. Okay, guys, I'm out of breath. It's too cold out here. It's a bit chilly. It's not too bad. It's just windy. When it's windy here in Alberta, it just feels chilly. All right, so ooh, there's another nice house there. Now that house backs onto the canal. So the front of the house is here, but the backyard is, you know, so that house may be $1 million house there, guys. It looks pretty big. So these houses along here could very well be $1 million. I'm not sure. So in the US, the central bank is called the Fed. Okay, so that's short for Federal Reserve. So if we say a sentence like, I think the Fed is going to pivot, what does that mean? That means they've been raising interest rates, and then they're going to change their mind and start lowering interest rates. Okay, that's what pivot, right? They pivoted, they changed their minds. Or, I think the Fed is going to do an about face. If you're watching American, you know, financial podcasts, they'll talk about the Fed. If you're watching Canadian podcasts, they might talk about the Bank of Canada. Okay, so that is maybe something you're interested in. Let me know, are you interested in financial things, learning about financial things? So if you buy a house here in Canada for $1 million and the interest rate suddenly goes way up, well, then that means your payments are also going to go way up. If you have a variable rate mortgage, right here in Canada, well, and anywhere really, there are two kinds of loans. One loan is called a fixed rate. That means the lender decides to lend you money for a period of time for a fixed rate. Okay, so let's say I'm the lender and I say to you, I will give you money for 5 years and you pay me a fixed rate of 5% interest per year. So let's say I give you $100,000. If I had $100,000, do you have $100,000? Maybe you should lend it to me for 5%. It wouldn't be a bad deal. I might not pay it back. It wouldn't be a bad deal for me. It might be a bad deal for you. So if I lent you $100,000 at 5%, that means you have to pay me $5,000 per year every year. That because it's a fixed rate. Now imagine, guys, we've reached the canal, right? I'm giving you a financial lesson. I wasn't planning to talk about houses, but now we're here, and now these are nice houses, big, huge houses actually over there. Those have got to be $1 million. $1 million. Nice canal here, trees and flowers and stuff like that. So so let's say, I was gonna say, so there's two kinds of loans, right? There's fixed rate loans and variable rate. Variable means it can move, the interest rate can change, okay? Or sometimes called a floating rate. A floating rate means it can change, right? Now, if you take a loan for a house, then it's called a mortgage. Okay, so if you go to a bank and you say, I want to buy a house, give me a loan. That loan is called a mortgage, okay? Now, a few years ago, just like 3 years ago, basically the central banks in the Western world were lending money at basically 0%. Right? It was like in Europe, it was -%. They had negative interest rates. Okay, here in, I think 2 years ago, the rate was maybe 0.25% here in Canada. So that means the banks, like your bank here in Canada, was borrowing money from the Bank of Canada, which is the name of the central bank. Okay, they were borrowing money at basically nothing, and they were lending it to you to buy a house for about 1.5% to 2%, right? Because the banks won't give you the money for free, like the same rate that they're getting from. They need to make money, right? They're the middleman, right? It's just like a business. A business buys products from somewhere and they sell the products for a profit. Well, it's the same with the banks. They borrow money from the central bank for, let's say, this much, and they lend it to you for this much, and so they make money off you, right? It might be, they might add 2% on top of that. Okay, so the Bank of Canada rate, or the central bank rate, is often called the prime rate. Okay, so the bank might lend money to you at prime +2, or prime +1, or prime +3, you know, whatever they, you know, different factors, whatever they decide. Then it's added, right? So right now the Bank of Canada rate is 5%. So does that mean you can get a mortgage for 5%? No, because you cannot borrow money from the central bank. You don't have those privileges, right? You have to go to a normal bank like RBC here in Canada, and you talk to them and say, give me a mortgage. And they'll say, okay, we'll give it to you for maybe 6 or 7% now. Okay, so you could choose if you want a variable rate mortgage. That means your payment could go up or down or whatever over a period of time. Or you might want to be kind of feel like maybe you want to plan out your life a little bit better, and you want to kind of have a fixed rate mortgage. Okay, it's up to you. You can choose. Now, for people who, let's say 2 or 3 years ago, they got a mortgage. Like, let's say this house here, okay? Let's say this person bought this house for $1 million at 2% interest rate a few years ago. Now, let's say they locked in fixed rate for 5 years. What percent are they paying now? They're paying the same rate as they did when they bought it, because it's locked in, right? for 5 years. That's kind of the normal term. It doesn't need to be 5 years. It could be 3 years, it could be whatever. But normally it's like 5 years, right? So now when that 5 years comes you know, to term, that's kind of the term limit. Usually you borrow money for, let's say you want to buy a house, it's like 25 years. The loan is for 25 years, but it's broken up into terms, okay? That term decides the interest rate, right? After that term is done, then the terms are renegotiated, okay? So let's say, oh, that's a big house there, guys. That's a honkin' big house. If something is a honkin' big, if you describe something as honkin' big, that means it's huge. That house is a honkin' big house, guys. And this house here too, man, these are mansions here, guys. These gotta be like 5-bedroom homes, 5-6-bedroom homes with a big living room and kitchen and walkout basement, right? See, these homes on the other side, you can see it goes up, right? I don't know if you can see it from here. So we can find a good example. So on that side of the street, they pull in the vehicle. The vehicles are up a level, and then like the houses are built on a hill, right? So from the back, this is actually the basement of the house. From this side, it looks like the ground floor. So these are called walkout basements, okay? So actually all these houses along here are walkout basements. I don't know, these people all have trees, and like, it's kind of hard to show a really good example. If I find a good example up here, I'll show you. But man, look at these houses. Beautiful houses here, guys. These have got to be $1 million. So anyway, let's say you bought $1 million house a few years ago, and you got lucky and you got a low interest rate at that time for, let's say, 2%. That means you are paying $20,000 per year in interest, right? Let's say it's $1 million at 2%. That means it's $20,000 per year. But let's say next year, let's say you bought this house 4 years ago, and next year your term is coming up, or let's say this year, right now, your term is up. Now you need to renegotiate the terms with the bank. What's the bank going to do? Are they going to lend you money for 2%? Not a chance. Now it's going to be like 6 or 7%. Now, how much is that going to increase your mortgage payment? Well, if you still owe $1 million, let's just say for example's sake, $1 million at 6%, then you're paying $60,000 per year. Interest, we're not even talking about the principal, right? Usually when you have a mortgage, well, any loan has a principal portion and an interest portion. Guys, it's windy over here. Let me take cover. Actually, this is a good example here. You can see the hill. See, like the hill goes up there, and on that side there's the vehicles they park in the garage, and then the hill comes down, and this is a walkout basement, right? Okay, so let's put on our thinking cap, calculating these numbers, right? So $1 million loan, you're gonna well, any loan is gonna have the principal portion and the interest portion. Forget about the principal, we're just talking about interest rates now. Your interest portion on your $1 million loan at 6% is going to be $60,000 a year. Let's just keep it simple. All right, 60,000. There's ways they calculate it if they if they calculate it yearly, the interest rate yearly or monthly. The lenders love to get every penny out of you. So sometimes people calculate it monthly, sometimes it calculates it yearly. It makes a difference. It's not a huge difference, but it makes a difference, right? So anyway, so yearly, let's say $60,000 you have to pay the bank for interest. But a few years ago, you were only paying $20,000 a year. How much is $20,000 per month? $20,000 per month. That's you're paying like $1,600 a month. And now, like back then, now suddenly you're paying $5,000 a month, right? 60,000 divided by 12 months in a year is 5,000, right? So your payment just went from your monthly interest payment for your house went from 1,600, give or take, to 5,000. Now, how are you going to afford that? I was talking to a real estate agent a few days ago, and she told me that she just met a client that day or a few days before, and they had told her that their interest payment, their mortgage payment, had gone up $800 a month. And that was just for, I think, a normal house. We're not talking $1 million house, right? Just imagine this. That's how fast the rates have gone up. So you took out a loan a few years ago at 2%, and now it's like 6%. That's massive. On a house like this, big houses, like $1 million houses, you're talking thousands of dollars per month. How can a person afford that? Change. I mean, maybe if you buy a mansion like that, look at that mansion, guys. If you buy a mansion like that, yeah, it's probably going to be like, it might mean that you're rich, right? And maybe money doesn't matter to you that much. Maybe you can afford to pay $60,000 a year in interest, right? But for normal people like you and me, there's no way we can afford that, right? And so what are people going to do? They're going to foreclose on their homes. Foreclosure means you cannot pay anymore. You don't have enough money to pay the bank. So what does the bank do? Does the bank say, we'll forgive you, we'll forgive you? No. They come after you and they say, give me my money. And you say, I don't have enough money to pay you. The interest rates have gone up so much, and now my mortgage is like $1,000 or $2,000 payment per month more than back a few years ago. I can't afford it anymore. So they take your house. They physically will take your house away from you. And then you go and live on the streets, right? So this can happen. It's happened before in history, where suddenly there's mass foreclosures. People cannot afford to pay their mortgages, so the bank takes it from them. And that's very, very dangerous for the economy, because if suddenly everybody's losing their homes, you know, that's a bad sign, right? How would you like to lose your home? Suddenly the bank comes there with the police and they take your house away from you by force, right? They're not going to ask you to do it. They're going to come there, physically take it away from you. That's crazy. So that's called a foreclosure, where they get your house. They take it from you. So, man, it's windy out here, guys. Look at that. I was trying to escape the wind. See guys, here we're going from the basement suite side of the house up to the next level. Okay, you can see, this is a great example. You can see this incline here, right? So there it is. So it's like, that's the basement, called a walkout basement, right? So I don't know where we're going, guys. We're just walking around talking to you about financial stuff. Smash like if you love learning about financial things. If you're an expert, you probably know more than me about these things, but I just want to teach you some of these English terms. Foreclosure, interest rate. If you're listening to a financial podcast, you might hear them talk about the Fed or the Bank of Canada or the ECB, the European Central Bank, right? You might talk about them pivoting. Pivot. Okay, guys, let's go this way. This looks like a nice calm back alley here. Someone has a nice boat out here. Let's go check out this boat, guys. So the reason these financial podcasters are talking about this now is because we're at that risk. Okay, so the real estate agent I just talked to, she said that people are at real risk of losing their homes. She said if the Bank of Canada increases rates anymore and people's mortgages, like terms, come to maturity, right? Then they need to refinance. Guys, there was a guy standing in front of his garage, so I didn't want to stop and take a look at the boat. Let's see if we can find another boat. I don't like to disturb people in my videos. So people's rates, I mean, if you think about this, 2 or 3 years ago, people were getting mortgages at 2%. Now it's 5 or now they can get mortgages for like 6 or 7%. So these people are still paying 2% the way they got when they got them, but that's not going to be for much longer. Maybe next year, maybe this year, maybe 2025. These mortgages are going to be vastly different in the amount that you're paying. Like I said, if you're paying $1,600 a month interest, and then let's say suddenly you're paying $5,000, can you afford that? Or even like $2,000 or $3,000? Can you afford that? An average person's mortgage payment will have gone up $800 to $1,000 if they had a variable rate mortgage, right? If they didn't, if they locked in, well, that was good. They got lucky. They got lucky. But anyway, guys, so we'll see what happens here. The economy might collapse. Who knows what's going to happen? So the Federal Reserve in the US, or the Bank of Canada here, central banks all around the world may pivot, change 180 degrees, right? 180 means complete change that way, right? We're not talking 360 degrees. We're talking just 180 degrees. Okay? So, you know, these central banks will pivot. They will do an about face. Otherwise, the citizens, average people who live in these homes, they're going to lose their minds. Right? They're going to be very angry. So if you lost your house, would you be angry or would you be happy? If the bank came and took your house away from you, how angry would you be? On a scale of 1 to 10, let me know in the comments. How angry would you be? I would be livid. Livid means you're very angry. I would be absolutely livid if the bank took my house away from me. So that's very bad news, right? Anyway, guys, well, there it is. There you have it, your financial literacy lesson. And look at this traffic here. Some cars driving, nice pathway, nice clouds. It's pretty windy though, so hopefully you can hear me all right. And anyway, there you have it. About face. And remember, do an about face. If you do, that word, it's kind of a phrase. They did an about face. They will do an about face. They are doing an about face, right? It means they change very quickly, right? You change 100, you turn around and go the other direction pretty quickly. So let me know an example in your life. Have you ever done an about face? Have you ever changed your attitude about something, or physically turned around and gone the other direction? Anyway, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all your support and for giving me thumbs ups and nice comments. Wow, it's windy here. Hey guys, maybe I should do an about face and walk this way. There we go. I just did an about face, guys. Let me know an example in your life where you did an about face. So guys, as always, I love you so much. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're staying safe and happy. And as always, I'll see you over in the next episode of Mad English TV. Take care.